a round table, but need to be quite relaxed. And it's on creative poetry and translation. With guest poets and translators, William Rowe, Kazan Mozarek, Philip Terry, Albert Patisset, Lee Martins, and myself. The idea is that we all read one creative translation, and we talk a bit about it, and then we open like the round table to you, about express your opinions or share your comments. Roman Jacobson once said that poetry is by definition untranslatable, and that only creative transposition is possible. In this roundtable, we will look at different examples of creative transpositions that not only reflect upon that untranslatability, but also suggest an inherent potentiality to generate meaning. I will start by reading a translation. I will start myself and then I will go in order. Of the Peruvian poet Cesar Vallejo into English by Professor William Rowe. Rowe translates Vallejo's famous book Trilce into English, and for each original poem he provides two versions. One, which I will read first, is a literal transposition of the Spanish into English, what we would call a literal translation, and one which he calls a gloss, which I don't know how to describe, but it is difficult to summarize it in a word, but maybe it's like, I will read also as a translation of maybe the meaning or the soul of the original poem. Let's see what you think. So I'll read first the little one and then the gloss. Trilce. 2. Time. Midday stuck between sunlights, boring palm in prison releases time. Was. Cocks crow scratching in vain, mouth of the bright day that conjugates was. Tomorrow, the still warm bed of being, the present things scheming for tomorrow. Name. What's the thing that trickles is called? It's called the self-centered suffers. Name. And this is the gloss. Trilce. 2. Time divided in equal parts and empty. The time of capitalist society. Prison is its representative space. The language administers it. There's another time. The time that's there before the word. The time it takes to say the word time, or for space to place itself before us. It wounds us. It makes our hair stand on end. The book will open up this time with all the difficulty it entails, such as turning language inside out. So, this is the gloss, and it's quite different from the literal translation. Do you have any suggestions? Maybe William can talk about it as well. You can ask him directly. So that he's here. Or also not to take questions and comments. William, I have a question.
Yeah.
I was struggling with the word gloss. Is it meant to be like an addition, a comment on the original form, or more a translation of what we read, like the potentiality of meaning of that word? I don't know how we could do it. Question.
Suggested by and I ended up getting rid of that. double translations. So I don't tell the reader what the second one is exactly doing. But there is an afterword that makes it plain that these prose translations are drawing out
still like some, when we talk about like the soul of the poems, it's still like that they do think that sometimes you want to be closer than the literal translation of the poem or what the poem might be.
I would say these poems are incredibly distant from themselves. They're already at huge distance within the poems, therefore you can never get close to them in that sense. The distance is registered when in fact we have two translations precisely. They don't coincide.
Anyone else? We'll move to the next. Maybe later if you like to comment. So, Timothy,
so I'm going to read what is supposed to be poem number 23 from Petrarch's Tanzania. And so I'm going to read three bits. Which is a bit rude, I suppose, but I'm going to do it. And what started off as being a poem in Petrarch's style, in fact, I didn't enjoy reading at all. So I decided I would make up a poem and call it Poem 23. And so the first poem, I will read a little bit of it, and then read up the kind of follow-up poems to it, which is the translation. So it starts like this. And I saw a plane without wings, whilst playing cricket in the New Directions anthology of Chinese poetry, with my hands in their pockets, dreaming of long ago, bitterly contemplating the Tao in the deep autumn garden suburbs south of London among the Wutung and Bougainvillea. Nel dolce tempo della prima etade. Well, you said it, as we were parting at the Hibiscus Tavern, and the froth was still bright upon my summer jacket, and the nipples of the men in the clubhouse showers, dreaming of what it would be like if we really were women and could write like them. Not just imagining the feeling of grass or the splendours of carrying children for a whole summer high in our bellies. And then it goes on at tedious length. And then what I did for poem 123 was I took that poem 23, and for every noun in the poem I put a dictionary definition of the noun instead of the noun. So the line, and I saw a plane without wings, becomes, and I saw a flat surface on which a straight line joining any 2 points on it would wholly lie. Without, each of the limbs or organs by which a bird, bat or insect is able to fly. Whilst playing, and it should be cricket, right? Whilst playing a game played on a grass pitch in the New Directions anthology of Chinese poetry, and then it says, and my hands in their pockets, and my end parts of the human arm beyond the wrist in their small bags sewn into or on clothing. Dreaming of long ago, bitterly contemplating the down of the important gardens of the second London under Wutung becomes dreaming of long ago, bitterly contemplating the Chinese philosophy based upon the writings of an ancient Chinese philosopher in the deep third season of the year. Piece of the ground, usually partially grass, outlying district of a city, especially residential point of the horizon, 90 degrees clockwise from east of London among the Stirricula plantiforma, an auspicious tree in Han China, and genus of flowering plants native to South America from Brazil, west to Peru, and south to southern Argentina, sugar to Provence. And then from 223, I took all of the nouns from 123 and gave the dictionary definitions there, which seems a marvellous way to make a big fat book. It takes ages. And so it now becomes, I won't read much of it. And I saw a flat outside of the material body on which is straight, more or less straight like mark or pen, pencil or graver. Joining any two marks made by the end of a sharp, piercing instrument, on it would clearly lie, without each of the jointed appendages of an animal used for locomotion or grasping, or instrument or medium by which some important action is performed, by which a girl, a maiden, a large stick, a club, specifically a piece of wood, one end thicker or broader than the other, or any air-breathing arthropod is able to fly, whilst playing contest, physical or mental, according to certain rules, played on an endogenous plant and simply ones, a thick, black, lustrous and sticky surface, in the new directions and qualities of Chinese poetry. That is my method.
I mean, is it pleasure and substitution, or is it self-discipline? Is it English discipline that you enjoy that restraint?
I like the fact that the tones make loads of words that aren't my own, that I don't have to control over. And I like the fact that it's translators will draw me to dictionaries from time to time. And I like the absurdity. And I like the idea of things on Twitter, you never translate, there's never a final translation, so we can always be opening it again and again and again. So
of course, one of the main translation methods
indeed, yes, you could like that. I thought I invented that method until I opened the Oulipo Encyclopedia. And they have that method. But yeah, there's about 73 different translation methods in this book.
which is the most outre one.
I think the silliest one is the one which came from Drew Garner, the American play, where you play the game of taking a poem which you don't know. Well, it can be a poem that you know, and taking your specs off and kind of reading what you think you see. But the problem with that is it's really poison, so I did that with loads of them, and it was always just about sex and bad, just bad behaviour. And it became really boring, because it's a mirror, right? And I didn't like what I saw in the mirror. Yeah.
You just said you like the fact that the poem is made up of lots of words that aren't your own. I wonder why that is. Why do you like that? I mean, so many people are involved with doing that kind of thing in various different ways now. Why do you other
Because I think, in a way, one of the greatest pleasures of poetry for me is surprise. And so, what you get when you look at, I can't remember the first bit. I saw a plane without wings, and a plane becomes a mathematical thing, right? And so you get into loads of different lexicons, which, maybe you're not so familiar with, and the way they all kind of bump up against each other, and you get that striking arm being the, thing at the end of the wrist, and yeah, it's just all a mixture. It's really enjoyable.
I think what is very amusing about that technique that you're describing as well is that the dictionary is a tool of clarification. Right? So you go to the dictionary for enlightenment. When you go to the dictionary, you get this obfuscation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that's a great joy as well. And the dictionaries as well, of course, right? So your choice of dictionary again, of course, is you know, the idea that the poem just goes out and becomes infinite.
Do you use lots of different dictionaries?
Very playful and pleasing as well.
So do you use lots of different, this is actually for anybody on the panel who's translating. Do you use lots of different dictionaries, or do you just stay with one?
No, generally I use one that I got from a charity shop. I don't remember what kind. It's a big fat one. Oxford. Oxford.
No, online.
Oh no, if you do it online, it's just a nightmare. Because you have, you know, when you go online, you type in a word, it gives you the word. So you can't click to go plus 7, you know, so it's much easier doing, yeah, going in.
We're gonna move to Alberto, you said, and then I will follow. And we have time at the end to continue.
Yeah, this is a poem that I wrote with the purpose to be translated. So the idea of the poem was translation. And before it, behind it, there's the idea of a book in the air. And perhaps that would be related to oral poetry and how the oral is transferred and changed and fragments are picked at and how it's delivered. I know that there is one village here in Turkey, Cusco, that they use the whistling language. There's a village in the Canary Islands in Spain, where it's lying. They use the whistling language to communicate from mountain to mountain. So the idea was to send the poem from one language to another. So I started writing the poem in English in London, and then I translated that into Spanish. During the translation, there was this idea of take the word, for example, bird, in different languages. We have pájaro in Spanish, Hussein, Foggen, Ferglai, Russell. To me, they're all different birds. The taxonomy of birds is different here. And how all this is transferred. So I'll just read very quickly a part of the first writing to be a translation, which is, the title is Breadth of Sense. Sense meaning direction rather than understanding or knowledge of the direction. And then we'll listen very quickly the translated version into Silver, the listening language. Breadth of sense. What sudden touch set the table in both? 4 chairs, 1 book, on the verge of the abyss that is always before. The voice voiced their notes. Who does the land communicate with? The mountain, the fox. The air is sailing. When will the chair spouse the table? See spoons stir verses full. Sway seconds handle poetry to poems. It goes on. There is the idea of the landscape, that I forgot to mention, and how the landscape transforms the words. So the landscape is like a meadow. There's some abandoned houses. So the idea of a chair, an abandoned book perhaps, and of course also connections with the civil war. And there's a quote from Walter Benjamin, who does the land communicate with? The mountain and fox. And this is the translation into Silver, which if you speak Spanish, you can kind of follow it. It's a very short. Now, this was sent from one mountain to another. It's about perhaps 3 kilometers away. And when this is portrayed into the air, things happen because the landscape affects the words. And one of them is the birds. The birds, the blackbirds, pick up the whistle. And then perhaps there are some verses that the birds repeat. When I was there, one of the whistlers sent a message to the daughter to come and bring some food because there were guests. She did. She answered. She did. And then later on, she could hear the same message. She said, "But how come not again?" And it was not for that, it was the birds who were exactly repeating the message.
Because it's something like, you need to communicate something useful, right? I need bread, please bring it.
Yes.
But do they also use it for like a step like writing language, or would you really like what
It was very, very peculiar because those who were against studying a poem were the academics, the ones who's reading down the basics of the language. And they were saying, this is not possible. However, when I spoke to the shepherds, they said, I can do it. I can send this message. Of course, when they sent a message, some would say, what is this? What does he say?
Miss here, Miss Whistle. So yes, come on.
Yes, come on. And that's the interesting thing, because there's always, when someone is whistling, it's always being interrogated. Did you mean this? Can you say it in another way? I don't understand. So a lot of the times if you say, I'm coming at 8 o'clock, please help me prepare dinner, something like this. And I didn't understand what you said, could you repeat in another way?
But I mean, it's really, I mean, to me it suggests that the birds can translate sounds, or copy the sounds. They can translate those sounds of birds and other sounds of birds and actually poetry.
Yes.
Yes. Taking birds on and turning it into music.
Jonathan Skinner, sorry to did a reading in London.
Okay.
About a month ago, he had recording a bird song, and he had exactly the tone and syllables which he was putting into words. It's remarkable.
So is there a whistling dictionary?
Sorry.
A dictionary, there's like a lexicon,
The,
sounds like that
yes.
some
I mean, there are about
Norwegians flag poems.
there are about 7 whistling languages in the world. One is here, in Bristol. I think it means the village of the birds. Probably my accent is terrible. Kush is birds. Is it? Yes. So the ones who used silver were the Wanches. They were the first inhabitants of the islands, the came from North Africa. So they didn't speak in Spanish. So now the books that you find are books based on Spanish.
Well, I think like most of us, I had a couple of poems to read. I don't know if we're going to manage to read all of them, but I was struck by the poems I've chosen with so many echoes already that things people have come up with. This will link up to things that have happened already, but I'm going to start with what was going to be my second one, which is a poem by Tom Reagan, and it's from a 1975 pamphlet called From the Hungarian. And for These poems, Tom and Val Rogoff translated the 3 Rogoff poems that have appeared in Hungarian, and they translated them back into English multiple times, so you've got about 12, 15 poems. And they did this without knowing a word of Hungarian, and then subsequently shuffled the lines to get new poems in English, and this is just one of them. Slovak intellectual appears to Cyclops, resembling your face, hiding ecstasy and cement, works of Weber, cutlass, banana scar on amber mind nuts, oval, a robot tutu lovingly, spirits metallically among the tortoises, with 17 sporadic rotors, similarly steaming Egyptian musars. Peter Kelneck, who in moderation seemed the energy of spinning sarcasm, semi-exerted, takes from it a Slovak intellectual. And I chose this because these poems, I've always loved these poems. They seem exciting and really special and unique. And they're exciting, I think, because they challenge a lot of assumptions we have about translation. The assumption, for one thing, that the translator should be competent in the source language. And you might wonder what exactly is the source language.